Welcome to Computing at Home with Digital Schoolhouse. My name is Estelle, otherwise known as ComSci Geek. I'm a computing teacher and also develop resources for the programme. We specialise in delivering computing workshops that are accessible, educational and fun. You are watching part 2 of our Starlink Battle for Atlas workshop. Although you will need a PC or laptop to follow along with me, I will also be making suggestions of what you could do if you don't have access to a computer today. And don't forget, part 1 of all our workshops is unplugged, meaning you don't need any tech to take part, just a device to watch the video. You can watch any of our previously streamed workshops on our YouTube channel. Just search YouTube for Digital Schoolhouse. To all learners watching, remember you can pause the video at any time to take notes, collect your thoughts, or take part in the workshop alongside me. The Digital Schoolhouse team are ready and waiting in the chat should you have any questions throughout, and I'll also be taking 5 minutes at the end of the stream to answer your questions. Parents and guardians, you might want to watch the next bit as it explains how to access our resources, but after that feel free to join in or sit nearby to supervise if you want to. Let's get started. Okay, so first of all, I'm just going to explain where to find our resources if you wanted to join in without access to a computer, and also give you a couple of options if you want to have a go at this at a slightly higher level. So first of all, head over to the Digital Schoolhouse website, which is digitalschoolhouse.org.uk. If you go to resources and then click on live workshops, if you're watching this with me live on Twitch, you'll find the resources at the very top of the page. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll need to scroll down and find Starlink Battle for Atlas. Click on the link at the first link of that, Starlink Battle for Atlas. And if you go to where it says public files, you'll find the worksheets from last time are there, and there are a couple of extra sheets at the bottom of these that you could use today if you don't have access to a computer. So that is the level progression chart and the key art. And the other one that you might want to use in addition to those is the interaction sheet. So if you don't have access to a computer today, those are the 3 sheets that I would have a look at during today's workshop, and I'll explain a bit more about them in a moment. The other thing I wanted to just say as well, we're going to be working in Scratch today, so if you wanted to challenge yourself and have a look at something a little bit more advanced, maybe after doing Scratch, if you go into the Access All Files area, which is just here, it says Starlink Battle for Atlas Files, it will give you lots of different files. And the ones that I'd have a look at are these 2 here, which are the Construct 3 versions. So that's a slightly higher level version of what we're going to be doing today. So creating the same game, but using a slightly more advanced game engine. And if you wanted to really challenge yourself, if you go to the videos section, you'll find there are 7 videos that explain how to make the same game using Unity, which is a industry standard game engine, and it actually requires you to use full text-based coding. So that's something else that you might want to look at if Scratch is a little bit of a low level for you to be working at. But today we're going to be working in Scratch, but there's a couple of options there if you do want to challenge yourself and have a go at doing something a little bit more advanced. Okay, so hopefully that will be useful to you if you wanted to take things a little bit further today. Right, without further ado, let's begin today's workshop. Okay, so today's workshop, as I'm sure you are aware, is Starlink Battle for Atlas Part 2. As I said, if you aren't able to access a PC or laptop, which is what you will need to use for today's session, you could do the key art worksheet, design the key art for your game. This could include an App Store icon, game box, or an online store landing page. You could also have a go at doing some level progression and planning for multiple levels for your game. And having done that, you might want to then fill in interaction sheets for each of those levels. So those are 3 options if you're not able to join in with me today using Scratch. But today's main workshop is going to be using Scratch, and that's what we're going to go straight into now. Okay, so in this workshop you're going to be learning about adding sprites, programming your ship using sequence selection and iteration, which we learned about last time, and then you're going to be learning how to make your ship interact with other sprites. Okay, so now you know from for the workshop earlier in the week, you know what the different programming constructs are: sequence, selection and iteration. We're going to be using them now to program our starship. So first thing we're going to go through is how to access Scratch 3, how to save and how to open your work. As I did last time, I will go through the steps in a presentation, then I'm going to go step by step through with the actual software for you. So you can watch for the first time and then have a go at following along with me after that. Remember, you can pause the stream if you need to. Just be aware that you might need to just skip it back to catch up from where you left off if you do decide to pause it. Okay, so the first thing is Scratch is available online. So what we're going to be doing is heading over onto the Scratch website. So what I'll do is I'll show you how to do that. It's nice and easy. In Google, type in Scratch. So I've already got it here in my address bar, but if you want to search for it, you can do it by just typing in the word Scratch. Press enter and it'll be the first link you can see. Once you go to the Scratch website, it will load. You'll need to click on where it says create. And this will take you straight into the Scratch editor. Okay, just while that's loading, I'll show you the next bit. So as I was saying, go on to Google, search for Scratch, it'll be the first link. Click on, where's my thing, there it is. Click on start creating. So it might look slightly different to how mine look. If it looks like this version, just click on start creating, or you can click on create at the top. It will then load this page. You can close the tutorial window once that loads because we're not going to be using that tutorial. I'm going to be talking you through how to use the software. And then the other thing I'll quickly show you is how to save your work. It's really important just to save it regularly so that if you do have a crash or your computer decides to stop working for any reason, you can access that work later. So to save your work, all you need to do is go to File and then click on Save to your computer. And when you want to open your work again, you go to File again and go to Load from your computer. So I'll show you all those things in Scratch as well for anyone who needs to go through those steps. Okay, so as I said, I was just waiting for mine to load, so you can see it's loaded. I've already closed the tutorial window, so if yours is still there, just click on the little cross to close that. To save your work, just go to File and then go to Save to your computer. That will save it. And then if you want to open your work again, just go to File and then Load from your computer. It will pop up a little box to tell you to let you go and find your piece of work. Most likely it will have gone into your downloads folder and you're just going to need to go in there and open it up from there. Okay, so that's the basics of how to open and save and also load your work from a previous save. Okie dokie, so let's get some sprites into what we're doing. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we are going to add some sprites to our Scratch program. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to change the background and then we're going to add the sprite for the ship. So the first thing you need to do is you're going to need to hover over the backdrop menu. Now that is in the bottom right hand corner. It's the one that looks like a little, looks like a couple of hills. Click on that and it will open up a little menu for you, and the one that you need to click on is the one at the very top that says Upload Backdrop. Now, last time I did say before we started this workshop you would need to download the resources for this workshop, and I've just realised I didn't remind you where to find those, so I'm going to quickly go through that now just in case anyone's watching who didn't remember to download those from last time, or you're watching part 2 without having watched past part 1, which is absolutely fine, by the way. It doesn't make any difference, but I do need to show you where to find the resources for today's session, so I'll quickly go through where to find those. So if you're needing to make sure you've got the resources for today's game, what you'll need to do is you'll need to go to the Digital Schoolhouse website, which I will, I'll quickly just remind you how to do that. It's digitalschoolhouse.org.uk. Click on resources and then live workshops. Find Starlink Battle for Atlas. Click on the link that's at the very beginning of the bit of text underneath that. Go into the Access All Files Here section. Wait for it to load. And the files that you're going to need for today are the Starlink resources. So what I would suggest you do is if you right click, it should give you the option to download all of them. There you go. So if you click on it and then go to where it says download all, and that will download all the files straight into what's called a zip folder. So a zip folder, if you don't know, is a way of compressing files so that they take up less space. So I don't know if you're aware of that. So if you imagine a bit like a beach ball that's been blown up, if you tried to get that through your letterbox, it would not fit. So you have to compress it by taking all the air out of it. Okay, and it's a little bit like that in a zip folder. So a zip folder takes the excess data that's not needed right away, and it makes the file smaller, and then you can get it through the letterbox. It can be sent over the internet, and when you receive it, your computer has some algorithms that it can use to rebuild the file and put the air back in the beach ball. So that's kind of what it works like. So I'm just waiting for mine to download the zip folder. So once you've downloaded that, you'll need to unzip the folder, which I'm going to quickly show you how to do once it's done that. So there we go, it's zipped it, it's downloading it now. So as I said, your computer knows how to unzip the folder because it has the algorithms built in to it. So I just wanted to show you how to do that very quickly before I move on, just in case that's relevant to any of you watching, because I don't want anyone sitting there thinking, I don't know how to get the resources for what I'm doing today. So you can see it's almost there. It's just creeping around to say that it's completed doing all of the downloading for me. So I'm going to click on this little arrow here, go to show in folder, and you'll see that there it is in my downloads folder, and you can then unzip it. Now, if you go to this little pink bit up here that says extract, if you have the option, you can extract it straight away there. On my version, I have to do a right click on it, and then I've got a few different options of things I'm going to use, but I can use 7-zip. And what I want to do is extract it to the folder. That means it won't just extract all the files and just drop them all over the place. It will extract it to a folder. So that's what I'm going to do. Extract to Starlink resources, and then it's got like a reference number. So I'll click that, it will export it and unzip it so I can then access my files, and there they are there. If you do need to pause the stream now to do that little bit of downloading and unzipping, then feel free to do that. Otherwise, I'm going to be carrying on with today's workshop. So there you go, there's my files ready for use in my game. Okay, so hopefully you've got those. Do feel free to pause now if you do need to get those things together. I'll pop a pause stream up in case you need a bit of time and something to get back to, so you can reference that pause stream being on the screen. Okay, so let's carry on and with our workshop and start to upload the backdrop. So I was just explaining how to do that, so let me go back in and finish off what I was telling you about. Okay, so as I was saying, we are going to be importing the background and the sprites for our game. So we need to, first of all, in Scratch, go to the backdrop icon, which is this one in the very bottom right hand corner. You hover over it with your mouse and it will make a little menu pop out, and then you want to click on where it says upload a backdrop. Once you've clicked on that, it will make a little menu appear that looks like this. It's a browse window that shows you all of your different files and folders, and you'll need to go and find where you have downloaded those files to. So generally, if you haven't moved them, they'll be in your downloads folder, and then the one that you're going to open is the one that's called Sonatus. So you're going to find that, do a double click on it, and then once you've done that, that will then add it in as a background, just like that. And you'll see it will be in the background there, and it will also be in the background of the actual window which shows what your game looks like on the right hand side. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do that now in Scratch, so you can follow along with me if you need to. So let's hop over into Scratch and do that now. Okay, so as I said, bottom right hand corner, go to the choose a backdrop icon, click on upload a backdrop. Then you're going to go into your downloads folder or wherever you've moved it to if you've moved it. Open the folder, open the resources, find the Sonatus backdrop, double click on it, and it will import it into your game. And you can see that there it is there, and there it is imported into my game. If it doesn't quite fit, you might want to just experiment with resizing it a little bit, which I'm going to do by just clicking on the little zoom in. I can zoom in and out a little bit to check it looks correct. And the other thing I can do is I can convert it to vector, and I can also do a bit of resizing then as well to make it the right size. So experiment to get it to the right size, so it should fill the whole of that background area. So you saw when I first imported it, there was like a white line at the top and the bottom. So I just converted it to vector, and then I used these little grab handles in the corner to resize it. So that is my background added to my game. So the next thing we need to do is look at what we need to do for importing our different sprites. So to add a sprite, what you need to do is you're going to go into that bottom right hand corner again, but instead of clicking on the background option, we're going to go to this one here, which has got like a little cat with a little plus on it. That's the one that we use for adding sprites. So you're going to hover on the sprite menu. It will make a menu pop out again. Click on where it says upload sprite. It will again open the browse window to show you your folders and your files. Find where you saved the assets for this game. Remember, assets are just all the images, sound files, animations, anything we're going to use in the game. You're going to double click on the ship, or you can do a single click and click open if you want to, and that will add it into your game. Okay, so that's what we're going to do next. So let's hop over and have a go at doing that. Okay, so we're going to go to the little cat, the little choose sprite icon. Click on upload sprite. And you can see it's already taken me straight to my Starlink resources folder because that's where I was last time. But if it doesn't pop up, remember it's in your downloads folder or wherever you've saved it. Double click on ship and it's going to pop it in for me. Let's try that again. I might do one single click and then open. For some reason my double click's not working at the minute. There we go. And if it's a little bit too big, we're going to think about how we can resize it in a minute. So don't worry if it is a little bit too big. We'll come back to that in a minute. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is get rid of that extra sprite. So at the moment, we've got both the ship and the cat, the scratch cat. And we don't want both of those things in there together. So to get rid of the scratch cat, you'll need to do a right click on his character down here in these little thumbnails. So these are all your sprites that are in your game. So you're going to do a right click on him, and then you're going to click on the word delete when that pops up in that menu, and that will delete your scratch cat. And then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to center your ship sprite. So you just click and drag it down. And finally, we're going to resize it so it's a little bit smaller, and you can see I've resized it to 70, but you can change it to whatever number you think is right. Okay, so that's what I'm going to be doing next. So I'm going to hop back into Scratch and do those bits in my game, so you can do them in yours as well. So right click on the scratch cat, click on delete, click and drag to move the ship into the middle at the bottom, and then use the size, which at the moment is 100, so 100%, and I'm going to move it, try 70 to see if that's the right size for my game. Yep, that's about right, and I'm just going to drag it down again so it's in the right place. And there you have the ship sprite in the middle at the bottom, and I've resized it to 70. Okay, as usual, if you need a little bit of time to do that, I've just realised I didn't actually show you my desktop in that bit, so I'll quickly redo that. Apologies if you were following along and I didn't actually show you. So all I've just done, I'm just going to do edit and just restore the sprite back to where I was. So to delete the scratch cat, I did a right click on him, I went to delete. I moved the ship down so it was in the bottom and in the middle, and I changed the size from 100 down to 70. There you go. So that's what I've just done. Okay, so let's have a look at what we're going to be doing next. Okay, so now we're going to do our first little bit of programming. The programming that we're going to be doing is thinking about how to make our I'll come back to that. I'll tell you what we're going to be doing as we go along. So we're going to be selecting the ship. So first thing we need to do is make sure we've got it selected. So you can tell it's been selected because it's gone blue, like that on there. Then you're going to go to the code tab, and that's where you can access all the different blocks in Scratch that allow you to program the different sprites and even the background as well in your game. Then you're going to go to the events section, and you can see it's color coded a little bit like Lego. So if you imagine you have to look up in the instructions in a Lego manual and you use the colours to help you work out what you need, you can do the same thing in Scratch. So all of the events, all the things that like trigger something happening are in this slightly lighter orange colour section. So you're going to go to events. You're going to go to the when space key pressed option, and you're going to drag that block into the code window here. Okay, so that's what you're going to do first, because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be programming our ship to move. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to click on the little arrow next to the word space, because it's using the space bar at the moment, and instead you're going to change it for the right arrow. Okay, so let's have a go at doing that together in Scratch now. Okay, so I'm going to make sure I've got my ship selected, which I have. You can see it's blue down here. I'm going to go to the events section. I'm going to get the one that says when space key pressed, drag that in, click on the little arrow next to the word space and change it for the right arrow. There we go. So that's the first bit done of the programming. Let's go and have a go at the next bit. Don't forget, pause it if you need to at any moment. That's absolutely fine. So we've added the right arrow. The next thing we're going to do is go to the motion block section. The motion blocks are the blue colour at the very top. And we're going to drag in the one that says change X by 10. And you're going to place it under the when right arrow key pressed. So let's go and do that in our program. Okay, so we go to the motion section, we're going to go to the change X by 10 and we're going to pop it underneath that block there. Okay, so let's go and have a look at what we're going to do next. Okay, so having added that block in, you're going to do a little bit of testing to make sure that your ship moves, okay? Because that change X by 10 is going to change the position of your ship by changing its X position. So if you watched some of my previous workshops, you might remember the X is to do with the horizontal positioning of that particular item. So it's going to move it across the screen to the right or the left. Okay, so we've changed the X by 10. So we're going to do a quick test to see what happens when we actually run the code now. So to do that, you'll need to click on the little green flag, and that will then allow you to run your program and just see what the code actually does. So let's run our code and check to see what that will do. So I press the green flag, and then I'm going to use the right arrow, and it makes my ship move to the right. Perfect. Okay, if you find it doesn't move where you expect it to, just check that your code matches mine. Okay, remember you can pause it if you need to and come back and run it back if you need to. Okay, so having completed that, I'd like you to see if you can work out what you need to do to complete this bit of code to make it so that not only will it move right, but it will also move left. So same steps as before, but instead of having change X by 10, it's going to be slightly different in there. So I'm just going to give you a chance to see if you can work it out yourself, and then I'll have a go at showing you what it should look like. So I'm just going to give you a minute, and then I'll talk you through what the solution is. Okay, so let's have a look and see what you've ended up with. Pause it if you haven't quite finished. Okay, so remember you need to do a test to see if it does what you expect it to do. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to add my codes and see if it ends up with the same as what you've put in yourself. So I'm going to go to the control section, event section again. Go to the when space key pressed, but this time I'm going to change it. Instead of right, I'm going to do left. And then I'm going to put in a motion block. I'm going to use the same one, the change X by, but instead of being 10, I'm going to make it minus 10. That's the solution that you're looking for. Okay, so we've got a first block that says when the right key is pressed, change X by 10. And then we've got when the left key is pressed, change X by minus 10. And then I'll press the green flag and just check to see if he now moves to the right and the left. And my ship now moves to the right and the left. Perfect. If yours doesn't quite do what it should do, then just look at my code and just make sure that it matches. Pause it now if you need to pause it, because we're going to be moving on to the next bit. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to add another sprite, but this time you'll be adding the sprite that is the meteor. So the meteor sprite, okay? I'm not going to go through this step by step before you have a go doing it yourself. I'm going to get you to have a go and see if you can add it yourself first. So this quick reminder, you go to hover over the sprite menu, and that's the one with the little cat with a plus. Click upload sprite, then go to your Starlink folder, and then you're going to double click on the meteor picture, okay? See if you can do that. I'll give you a chance. Okay, remember I'm just going to pop it over to you in case you need that to come back to if you have chosen to pause. Okay, so pause it now if you want a bit of time to do that, because I'm going to be showing you what to do in case for those of you that need a little bit of help. Okay, so to add your meteor sprite, you go to the choose a sprite menu, you click on upload a sprite. In your folder with all your Starlink assets, do a double click on the meteor, and that will add it into your window like so. Okay, so hopefully you've managed to do that yourself as well. Don't worry, the code won't be in here because now we've got the meteor selected. The code that we wrote was on our ship. So if you click on ship, you can see the code that we wrote a moment ago is still there. Okay, so hopefully you've done that. Pause it if you need to. We're going to be then moving on to the next bit. Okie dokie. So what we're going to do is then now think a little bit about how you move and resize your sprite. So you've hopefully just added your meteor. I want you to move it and resize it so it's the right size in comparison to the ship. Make sure you've placed it above your ship, and then once we've done that, we're going to have a play around with changing the direction that it's pointing in. So the sort of the tail that the meteor has at the moment isn't quite above it. So you're going to have an experiment with using the direction to move it until the tail of the meteor is it makes it look like it's dropping from above. Okay, so you're going to drag the arrow until the meteor is positioned correctly. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing next. So let's hop back into Scratch and have a go at doing that ourselves. So let's do, so we're going to resize, and then we are going to have a go at moving it so that the position of the sprite is rotated slightly so that the tail, the fire, is making it look like it's falling from the sky. So as usual, drag and drop to move it. We're going to change the size from 100, so I'm going to drop mine down. Let's try 70 and see if that's the right size. That looks about right to me. I'm actually going to position it slightly lower so you can see the tail. And then I'm going to go click on direction. It makes that little menu pop up. I'm going to use the arrow to just rotate it until it is pointing in the right direction. There we go. And then I just need to reposition it again so it's sat where it should be. There we go. Perfect. Again, pause if you need to, and we're heading back into a little bit more programming now. Okay, so having added your meteor, the next thing that we need to do is program it. Okay, so this is what you're going to do to program your sprite. But before you go ahead and start playing around with this bit of code, I'd like you to see if you can predict what you think it's going to do. So have a little think. Maybe grab that pad and pencil that you probably got to hand, because you know from experience Digital Schoolhouse workshops tend to expect you to have a bit of paper and a pen at any moment. And just note down what you think this might well be doing. So you can see that it's going to be it's going to be added to your meteor sprite. See if you can work out what you think this bit of code might be doing. Have a little think, jot it down quickly. Once you've got it written down, then you are now allowed to add this to your program. So I'll leave this on the screen for you for a little bit. Pause now if you need to, so you've got it up there for a bit longer. You'll need to select your meteor, click on code, and then add the blocks that are shown on screen. Okay, so I'll give you a bit of time to do that. I'll give you a warning before I move on so that you can pause if you need to. Okay, if you haven't quite finished, press pause now. Okay, I'm changing over into my view so I can add this onto mine. Okie dokie, so let's get my game up, there we go. So if you're following with me because you needed a bit of help on how to do this, make sure your meteor is selected over here. And I'm just going to quickly remind myself what the code was because I've already forgotten. So let me just bring that back up again so I can remind myself. I'm sure you're just like me and a little bit forgetful sometimes. I am definitely a bit forgetful. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my notepad so I can quickly note down the blocks I'm going to need because I am very forgetful sometimes. So just to show you, to prove to you that is exactly what I'm doing, I'm sat here, look, with my pen and my pencil and my notepad, and I'm going to just jot down the blocks to remind myself what ones I'm going to go back to. So I've got the green flag, I've got a forever, and then I've got a go to X and a glide. Okay, and I've just done like a shorthand note so I know what I've got to get. So in case you didn't believe me, there's my notes. So feel free to do that if you need to. Okay, so hop back into my code and I'm going to add that now to my Scratch. So again, make sure you got your meteor selected. I'm going to go to the event section because that's where I find the when green flag is clicked. Then I'm going to go to the control section and I'm going to add a forever loop. So we talked about iteration last time. Remember, iteration is the process when something's repeated, and have a little guess, what do you think the forever loop might do? Yeah, it repeats forever. And inside that forever loop, we're going to be going to the motion section and we're going to get the go to X, and we're also going to use the glide. And it's this one here that has the two different options in it for the X and the Y position. Okay, and then what you'll need to do is press the green flag and just see what happens. Absolutely nothing. Why does nothing happen at the moment? Can you guess from looking at the code that we've got at the moment? Have a think about what we understand by the X and the Y position, and hopefully you should see that the X and the Y is in the same place on both of them. And actually what we want to do is that when we start the game, this actually will glide down to the bottom of the screen. So that's what we want to do. So we need to work out what the X and the Y position would be if our meteor drops out of space and goes right down the bottom like that. Okay, so what you're going to need to do is drag it down and place it near the bottom. Oops, in fact I need to the reason it keeps looping back to the top is because I've got my green flag selected, so it's actually running it. So I need to stop it by clicking on the little stop sign, move it down to the bottom so that I can then work out the new X and the Y position. And you can see the new one here. So I've got -9, -157, and I'm going to change that. In fact, the X position can stay the same because remember that's its position horizontally. But the Y position is the thing I need to change. So I'm going to make that -157. And yours might be slightly different based on where you position your meteor. Once you're happy with it being in the right place, press the green flag and just check to see if that works. That looks fantastic as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, so if it's not quite right, then spend a bit of time experimenting with it until it looks absolutely perfect. Feel free to pause if you need a bit more time. That's absolutely fine, remember. Okay, so having done that, we've experimented with making the X and Y position correct to get the meteor in just the right spot. The next thing that we're going to do is test our game, which we've just done, and we tested it by pressing the green flag and making sure that the meteor dropped out of the sky and would have hit the ship if we had the rest of the programming set up. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to animate our sprites. So if you don't know, animation is the process that we use when we make something move, and we call it animation, and we do it by making almost like a little flicker book. So if you imagine if I drew a little picture in the corner of my notepad, and I made it so that each picture had a slightly different move. So I might do a little stick man and make his arm move up, and then I use my little flick, and I then flick through the pictures. It would actually make it look like his arm's moving. And that's what an animation, that's how it works. We'll have lots of different little images and we use them but by playing through them really quickly, and it would then appear to make the sprite move in some way. So that's what we're going to be doing. So we're going to animate our sprite now. So the one that we're going to do first is the ship. And the way that we're going to do this is we're going to make it look like it's got its firing lasers. So make sure you've got your ship selected. You're then going to go to the costumes tab. We've not done this yet. So you click on costumes. And that will make this view appear, which has got an editor where you can make changes to your design. And the first thing that we need to do is actually make a copy of the costume that we've got currently for our sprite. And you do that by right-clicking on it and then clicking on the word duplicate. And that will make a second copy appear like that. Then the next thing you need to do, in fact, I'm going to not quite explain the next bit. We're going to do that bit together now, because I don't want to give you too many instructions and make it very confusing. So let's hop back into Scratch and actually start to do those steps together now. So if I go back into desktop, there you go. So you can see it's still running. So I'm just going to press stop so it's not running still. So I'm going to select my ship. Make sure you got the ship selected. Go to costumes. Do a right click on it over here. Go to duplicate. And there you can see I've now got 2 copies of my ship costume. Okay, so I'm going to hop back into my presentation and talk you through the next bit. As usual, pause if you need to, if you need a bit more time to do what I've just done, or even skip back if you got a bit stuck. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do, we're going to make sure we've got the second costume selected, and then you're going to change the colour of the fill. So a fill is used when you want to colour something in. So if you imagine you had a lovely like circle like that, we could call it a fill if you then coloured the whole of the circle in. Okay, that's a bit rubbish colouring, but that's a fill. So we're filling in the whole of that circle. So we use a fill to describe the colouring in of the whole of the centre of something. So you're going to select the fill and you're going to use the sliders to select a suitable colour for your lasers. Now my lasers are going to be green. You can do different colours if you want to, it's up to you, but just play around with moving the different sliders until you get the colour you want. Okay, don't be afraid of moving things around, dragging things around. You're not going to break anything, just take time to get the colour that you're looking for. Once you've got the colour that you're looking for, you're going to use the line tool, and that's going to use the colour that you've selected and allow you to draw things. So you're then going to use the line tool to draw lines out of the laser cannons that are on your ship, just like in my picture, okay? And that will give the appearance of lasers firing from your ship. So let's go into Scratch and do that now. Okay, so go to the fill. So at the moment it's got like a little line through it. That means there is no fill. I'm going to click on the little arrow, and as I said, I'm going to use the little drag until I get the colour that I want, and I'm quite happy with that. I might drag it a little bit further that way to make a slightly brighter, almost like luminousy green colour. There we go, that's perfect. And then I'm just going to click anywhere to deselect it. I'm going to click on the line tool, make sure you've got ship 2 selected, and then I'm going to draw a line out of each of my laser cannons. Now it's up to you how you want to position your lasers. You can position them slightly differently to mine if you want to. You might want to make them so they all point to one particular location, or you might want to make them so they all go in a straight line like mine do. It's up to you how you want to handle your lasers. There we go, so there are my lasers. Again, pause if you need to. We're going to be going on to the next bit. Okay, so once you've done that, you're also going to rename the sprite. So the reason we're going to rename it is so that we can more easily work with the names of our costumes. And if we call it ship 2, we might forget that that's the one with lasers. And so instead of calling it ship 2, we're going to name it armed ship instead. Okay, so let's do that now and just rename that particular sprite. So hopping into Scratch, and we're going to rename, instead of calling it ship 2, we're going to call it armed ship. There we go. So that costume is now called armed ship, and you can see if you click on the first one, there is ship, and the second costume is called armed ship. So make sure you've got those named correctly. You could change the name slightly if you want to, but just make it something that's memorable and has meaning, and so you understand what that particular costume is of. Okay, so let's go back and have a look at what we're going to have a chance to do next. Right, so we're going to be doing a bit more animation. So having done our lasers, we're now going to think about how to trigger those. So we want to do that by adding some code. So we're going to add some code to the ship that will make the ship fire when you press the space key. So if you're not sure where the space key is, that is, if you look at your keyboard, it's the sort of the long thin button that's near the bottom of your keyboard. So that's the one that we're going to be using for making it look like your ship is firing its lasers. So as usual, you're going to click on code. And this is the code block that we're going to be creating. We're going to do when the arrow key is pressed. We're going to use a forever again. I've got my notepad again, look, in case so I can note down what I need. I'm going to note down those blocks. So we've got when the green flag is pressed. We've got a forever. We've got an if. So we've got some more blocks that we talked about last time. We've got if, remember that was selection. So we said if something happens, do this. In this case, it's if the space key is pressed. Then we're going to use a switch to costume. What do you think that's going to do? Yeah, it's going to change that the picture that we're using from ship to armed ship. Very good. So we've got switch to costume. We've got a wait. What do you think a wait's going to do? Yeah, it just means it's going to hold that picture just for 0.2 of a second and then switch the costume back to the original so it doesn't stay on the lasers. Okay, so I've jotted those down for me. If you need to pause it now so you can finish adding it yourself, feel free. If not, I'm going to go through how to do it and you can follow along with me if you want to. Pause now if you want to do it yourself. And I'm going to move over into Scratch. Okay, so as I said, make sure you've got your ship selected, go to code, and we're going to be adding more code. So don't worry about the code that we've added already. Nothing's going to happen to that. Just leave it there. And we're going to add more code underneath in the space that's underneath. And don't worry if it doesn't look like you've got enough space. Scratch will automatically move things as you're adding more code. If you wanted to make it a little bit the zoom level a bit higher and make it a bit bigger like I've done, all I did was I click on the icon here with the magnifying glass with a plus on it, and that will let you zoom in if you want to make it a bit bigger. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to events and we're going to get the when the green flag is pressed. I'm going to go to control and get a forever. I'm also from the same control menu going to get the one that says if then. And it's this one here. There are other types of ifs, but this is the one that we want to use. It doesn't have anything else underneath it. There you can see it's made a bit more space for me. And I'm going to add inside this section, I need one that says key space pressed. Now, this is a sensing block. So I'm going to go into the sensing section, which is this one here, which is a slightly sort of almost turquoisey blue colour. And the one I want is the key something press, and it's already set to space, so I'm going to use that one. If I wanted to change it, I just click on the little arrow and choose a different key. And then inside that, I'm going to use switch to costume. Now, you might have noticed that the different menus are sort of organised in a particular order. So have a little think before I show you which section of the code blocks do you think I'll find switch to costume? Is it going to be emotion, looks, sound, events, control, sensing, operators, variables, or my blocks? It's going to be in looks. And in that one, you want the one that says switch to costume. There you go. And we're going to change it to armed ship. So we're going to leave it as that, so that's fine. And then we're going to add another block in that says wait. And the wait are in it's either in events or it's in control. And I can't remember which one. It's in control. And it's at the very top of control. Wait, there it says 1 second. And we're going to change that. Instead of being 1 second, we're going to make it even shorter amount of time. And we're going to do 0.2. That means it is a 1/5 of a second in time. So if you imagine a piece of cake that was cut up into 5 pieces, it would just be one of those pieces of cake in time. And then we're going to add another switch to costume. So we're going to go to the look section. and we're going to add the one that says switch to costume again, but this time we need to change which costume it's switching to. So instead of being armed ship, we're going to change it to the ship. Okay, and you've guessed it, we're going to press the green flag and just test to see if it works. So press the green flag and you should find, oh dear, there we go. So it took a little while just to get it to working. Now, if you found that it started with the lasers on, have you got any ideas of what we could do to just stop that from happening? What you could do, if you find that it starts with the lasers on, and it should start with the lasers off, to make sure it always starts with the lasers off, you could add a switch to costume at the very beginning and just change that to be just the normal ship. And that way, every time you start the game, it will always start with the lasers off. Okay, so there's a little option for you what you could add there. So you might be wondering, we've got our lasers now firing, but it's not doing anything to our meteor. Why might that be? Okay, while you're pondering that, let's have a look at what we're going to do next. Okay, so we've just done this. We've tested our game and made sure that when we press the space bar, the lasers fire. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add another bit of animation into our game, and we're going to be adding it this time to our meteor. So we're going to click on costumes. We're going to, this time, instead of duplicating, we're going to be adding a completely new costume in. So to do that, you're going to hover over the little cat icon, the one that we used for adding new sprites earlier, but it's this time inside the costumes tab. You're going to hover over that, so it opens up the menu, and you're going to click on upload costume. And this time you're going to do a double click to add the explosion sprite. And once you've added that, you'll see it, there it is. You'll need to select the meteor costume again. So you've got that one selected as the one that comes up first. So let's have a go at doing that together now. So we're going to go back into Scratch. There we go. We're going to click on the meteor. We're going to go to costumes. And we're going to click on this one to choose a new costume. We're going to go to upload costume. And we're going to do a double click on the explosion, sorry. There we go. So we add the explosion and then we're going to reselect the meteor. So that's the one that's selected to start with. There we go. So we've added that together. So now we have an explosion that's ready to be used with our meteor. Have you got any ideas about how we might be using that? I think you might be right. We're going to be adding some code to program our meteor to explode. There you go. Programming our meteor to explode. Well done. So this is the code that we're going to start to use to make it look like our meteor explodes. So this is the code that you're going to be needing to add. So as usual, I'm going to get my notepad and I'm going to note down my blocks that I'm going to need. So you can do the same if you need to, or you can pause the stream if you want to, if that makes it easier for you. Either way is fine. And then once I have noted them down, I'll tell you when we're ready to move on, so you can pause if you need to. So we've got the when the green flag is pressed. We've got another forever. Why do you think we need to use forever so much? It's because we want it to keep repeating throughout the game. Very good, well done. So we're going to pop that in there. We've got an if again. And this time we're testing to see if we're touching the ship. And we've got another switch to costume. And then we've got a wait again. Different number of seconds this time, just over half a second. And a final switch to costume, which is going to switch it back to the meteor. Okie dokie. So that's the next set of blocks. So I'm going to be heading back over into Scratch now to do this. So if you need to pause, this is your moment to pause. Okay. So make sure that you have your meteor selected, because that's where we want to add the code to. If you don't have the meteor selected, then just make sure you do before you start adding the code. Go to the code tab and you'll see there's the code that we added to make it look like the meteor is dropping. And we're going to add in the code that means that if it's hit by the lasers, it explodes. So we're going to go to the event section. We're going to add the when the green flag is clicked. Then we're going to add a forever, that's in the control section, remember. Then we're going to use an if, so we're going to use the if then, there we are. And then next to that we need to put what the condition is. Remember, that's the thing that it's actually testing for. So the thing we're testing for is whether the meteor is touching the ship. So we're going to use the sensing section again. So we're going to use the touching. Now this is automatically set to mouse pointer, but we don't want it to be whether it's touching the mouse pointer. We want it to be if it's touching the ship. So just swap it for that one, using that little arrow again. And then we're going to use the switch costume again, which is in the look section. So we're going to use switch costume to explosion. And we're going to use await, which was in control. And we need to change the time. Can you remember what time I said I was going to change it to? Yeah, 0.55 seconds, very good. And we're going to use a final switch to costume from the look section to switch it back to the meteor. Why do you think we need to do that? Yeah, so that the meteor then appears, so it makes it look like there's more meteors falling. Very good. So as usual, we're going to do a quick test. Press the green flag, and what should happen is as it hits the ship, it switches to the exploded version. And you should find if you move your ship out of the way so that it doesn't actually hit it, there you go, it doesn't go to the exploded version. So it only explodes if it actually hits the ship. Perfect. Okay, so get that down. If you haven't quite finished, pause now. I'm going to be heading back into looking what we're going to be doing next. Okay, so we have pretty much finished the basic version of the game. So I'm going to give you a few challenges of things that you could do if you wanted to take this further, and a couple of ideas and some sort of starter code for you. So if you want to have a go at these challenges, that's wonderful. Do send us some screenshots and pictures of you having a go at the challenges if you do this. It'd be really lovely to see them. I'll explain how to share those at the end of the workshop. So a few challenges for you. First one is you could have a look at how you might be able to upload sound. So you can see I've zoomed in quite tightly into this to show you where the upload sound option is. And I'll show you how to do that quickly in Scratch as well, because it's in a bit of a strange place that you might not have noticed before. So if you want to have a go at the first challenge, which is to add some sound to your game, to actually add sound, what you do is you go to the sound section, which is just here, this tab here, and then you add sound by going to this menu and upload it. And you'll notice in your set of assets that I gave you, you'll notice there's a file called Prime for Battle, and that gives you some background music for your game. So that's your first challenge. See if you can work out how to add background music to your game. I'll give you another bit of snippet of code that will help you with that if you want to have a go at that. Just for in a second, so let me hop back across and show you that. So if you want to have a go at that challenge 1, the snippet of code that you'll need is here. So I'm not going to show you everything. It's a challenge. Have a go. Pause if you need to have a closer look at that, or note it down in your notepad now. So pause if you need to, if you want to note it down, because I'm going to move on to the next one. So challenge 2 is if you want to make it so that your ship actually moves around the screen, so it doesn't just move left and right in a more traditional asteroid Space Invaders style. There is a little idea of how you might do that there. So pause the stream now if you want to have a look at challenge 2 to make your ship move around the screen using the arrow keys. Moving on to the next challenge now. So you want to pause it, it's your last chance. Challenge 3 is add some code so that the user has to press a specific button to start the game. Again, there's a little idea of a snippet of code that you could use as a starter for that. Pause now if you want to do challenge 3. Challenge 4 is about adding a scoring system, and there's a few steps for this one. So this is involving adding a variable to your game. So a variable is something that can change while the program is running. So in this case, the score can change every time you manage to explode one of the meteors. So to do that, you'll need to add a score variable. You can see the instructions for that on the screen now. You would then need to add some code that allows you to add a score. So again, there's some example code there that you could use for adding a score every time you hit the meteor. So that's challenge 4. And the final challenge is to get the meteor to appear at random places and move in random directions all around the screen to make it a little bit more challenging. And again, there is the code there if you want to have a look at adding that to your program. So feel free to pause it if you need to. I'll just leave it on the screen for a moment. That is challenge 5. The other thing you might want to think about doing as well is, at the moment, if the meteor gets too close and actually eventually crashes into the ship, you might want to have a look at making the ship explode as well. So there's something else you might want to do as an extra little challenge, but that's probably the most advanced of the things that we've done in today's workshop. Okay, so today's workshop, you have learned how to add sprites. You've learned how to program your ship using sequence selection and iteration, And you've also learned how to make your ship interact with other sprites by making it do things like exploding the meteor. Very, very well done. As usual, I'm going to hop over into the chat now, and I'm just going to pop a little post in to say that I'm in here if anyone wants to ask any questions, and then I'll do a sneaky peek for next workshop in case anyone has any questions. So put your questions in now, so that we're ready to have a look at the questions in a moment. So I'm just doing questions now on the chat. So if you have any questions, please post them now. There we go. So that's in the chat room. If you do have any questions, pop the questions in. I'll do a sneaky peek while waiting for those questions to come in. So sneaky peek for today, for the workshop that we're going to be doing next week, we're going to be looking at something called big data. So just to explain a little bit about what that means, big data is the name given to big, huge data sets, such as the data collected by analytics companies from social media sites. And it's used in lots and lots of things for analysing and finding out trends and information about things. So that's what we're actually going to be doing next time, looking at big data. We're going to start with doing some analysis of different data, and we're going to learn how to do some different algorithms for searching and sorting data. And it sounds interesting, but you're not quite sure, might be a bit tricky, but we're going to be doing lots of really fun activities for teaching that. So do join us next time for big data. So we do that in the first session, and the second session on Friday next week is going to be based around making a Harry Potter style quiz. So that will be really fun, and I look forward to joining you next time. I've not got any questions in the chat window, so I'm going to finish just by closing off this workshop and saying thank you very much for joining us. So this has been Starlink Battle for Atlas Part 2. I hope you've enjoyed the workshop. It only leaves me to just finish by saying a huge thank you for taking part with me today. I hope you've had fun and learnt something new. If you have enjoyed this workshop, check out our YouTube channel for more follow-along activities. And if you've got any questions or feedback for me, please email dsh@ukie.org.uk. Now, we'd love to see you learning computing at home with Digital Schoolhouse. As I said earlier, if you do have a go at any of those challenges, please do send me some pictures in to show you completing those challenges. I'd love to see them. Parents and guardians, please feel free to share any images or videos using the hashtag computing at home on Twitter or on Facebook. Also, for those of you who love writing, Digital Schoolhouse have launched a creative writing competition, which you can find more information about on our website. If you're the parent of a primary aged pupil and are interested in finding out about how Digital Schoolhouse can work with your school, you can find out more information on our website, which is digitalschoolhouse.org.uk. You can also find our contact information in the section below or at the end of this video. Lastly, I wanted to say a huge well done for taking part today. I'm Estelle, and I look forward to seeing you next time.